Well, good morning to you. It's Daybreak, iFiber One News Radio, 737, as we welcome in on a Monday for the Sheriff's Sit Down, brought to you by our great friends at our Community Credit Union. We've got Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Let me see here. Let me get your microphone turned up. Try that one there. That's good. That's gotcha. How you doing?
Great, perfect.
It was a great weekend here with all the fun things going on with Forest Festival weekend. And let's go back, though, a few days before that. Thursday was the law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics.
Yes, torch run. We had a great run this year, and there were so many people to thank involved in this. Local businesses were really, really helpful in using some of their businesses. We used the Squaxin tribe was our finishing point, so we had a really nice area out there. Alderbrook, we used part of their facilities out there. We ran through the Alderbrook Resort and came out, and their staff
Still the same when they come out on the dock and cheer everybody on?
Yeah, came out on the dock,
cool.
and everybody comes through there. It was really fun. Just all the different businesses that contributed, and I don't want to miss anybody on these things, but all the law enforcement agencies contribute to that.
Oh man, you had a ton.
A few years ago, I'll show you this is that we got from Special
Hold
Olympics
it up a little bit
Washington,
a little higher there. That's good.
From Special Olympics Washington. It was for what they call a Circle of Honor for the amount of money raised and participation in that. And it came back and it said Mason County Sheriff's Office, and really it was Mason County Law Enforcement. So I had it changed to Mason County Law Enforcement. And then we had an addition last year. One of the neighbor guys, he is with a special operations unit out of Fort Lewis for the Army, and he came down to run. He ran the entire thing. He ran every leg. Wow. So he brought down.
Is it 24 or 26 miles?
It depends on. We changed it a little bit this year, so it's right in there somewhere. Okay. 24, 26, and so. Michael Johnson brought down the Special Forces or Special Operations unit that he's with. They came down this year with seven guys from the Army, and we were still concerned about maybe covering all that ground. And so we'd had conversation with the Sergeant Major at the Security Forces Bangor up there, Sergeant Major Caputo, a while back, and he called me the night before and says, "I've got a few Marines coming down." He says, "Where can we put our bus?" And 31 Marines came down, and a couple of guys from the Navy. And put them all in there, and covered the course well for us having them down. So it was really neat to have the United States military coming down and joining us.
Spencer, you said you were driving around and you saw them a little bit.
I was coming back from my little Walmart run and coming back roads home back to Grapeview, and so it must have been the Marines. I think it looked like the Marines in that group.
Yeah, they were in the green, and the Army were in the black shirts.
Yeah.
And the State Patrol started helping us out a couple of years ago with their motor units, their motorcycles, moving traffic around. Because
we got tight roads around here.
Yeah, most of our roads in Mason County don't have any run out. They go right into the ditch, and our ditches are 3 and 4 feet deep out in the county. And so there's no real area to stay off a fog line if there is one. And so we use up the roadway, and we try to stay off the major roads for safety reasons, but having the patrol there to join us with that, and both of our tribal police agencies join us, and the city and the State Patrol, and we had just everybody there being a part of it. It was great.
Tell me a little bit what it's like to run into both the schools, North Mason and then Shelton, to see the kids out there.
One of the fellows, I also mentioned DOC, one of the guys from DOC, the first year we did that and came out and he had tears in his eyes. He says, "Wow, what a neat thing." And I think that the neatest thing about that, Jeff, was that when we went through the schools is the amount of how respectful the kids at the high school are. They came out and they cheered the special athletes through there. And when you see them coming out, huge smiles on their faces, and every one of those students that came out, both at North Mason and Shelton, came out in such a positive way to encourage people, to continue on and to do what they're doing. That was a really neat thing to see the high school students in both buildings come out and with that kind of support. It was very encouraging to the athletes, and it was just a very uplifting experience. And so a special thanks to those students that came out in support.
The monies raised, of course, stays local in Mason County. I know it's a statewide organization, but the monies that you guys raised for this stay here for those athletes.
Right. We the money goes into the state organization, but we know how much we've raised, and we want to make that available for our athletes when they travel places to go participate in events somewhere, or even if it's fairly local, that money's available for them.
Then on Saturday, we saw them in the parade with you come down, not only at the beginning of the parade, but then as representatives through the sheriff's office as well.
Yeah, a new record. I've done the parade I think almost every year for many
Mm-hmm.
many years, and this is the first time I've ever done it twice in one day. We walked through and somebody mentioned about walking back to where our second group of stuff was. Chief Moody and I and Chief Eller from the tribe all walked through at the beginning, and we had some of our athletes with us. Well, we went back around, and the parade was so big that they hadn't even left yet. So when we got back, some of the athletes wanted to ride on the boat. And once one got on, everybody got on, and so we ran around twice. The sad part about going around twice is you only see what's in front of you and
Sure,
behind you.
sure.
So we really didn't see much of the rest of the parade, but I've never been around through the parade route twice. But there was a lot of people. I was very impressed this year. Both down Railroad Avenue, and you make the turn and you come back. Franklin was busy all the way back up to, all the way back to Safeway where we ended back around the loop. So there was a lot of people this year.
Yeah, lots of folks around the area, and it seemed like for the most part everybody was able to travel around decently despite the road congestions in town, and then everybody seemed to be on their best behavior for the most part. Didn't hear too many.
Yeah, I know. I saw Chief Moody in the morning. Of course, we walked through the parade, and he was up bright and early, and I know that those guys at Shelton PD, I mean, everybody, we started being busy Friday afternoon. It never ends when people come into town, all kinds of calls all over the county, but I know the city's especially busy, and I know the chief was going to have a long day. He was up early and wasn't going to be able to shut down till everybody goes home at night, which is wee hours of the morning. So I know the Shelton PD folks were really busy, and law enforcement in general, but it's a good weekend. The weather was just right. It wasn't overly hot, and it worked out wonderful for everybody. It's great for our community to have. It seems like the Forest Festival thing kind of waned for a few years, like everything else in the economy, and now it seems to be coming back and people joining in.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful for all of our businesses and our community.
Oh, and nice weekends too. They see how beautiful it's going to be, and they come into town.
Oh yeah, a
Very
lot of
cool.
people from out of town, like you said, the car shows.
Yeah.
It brings money in when people have to eat somewhere and they have to buy their gas somewhere and they go in the stores.
Yeah.
It certainly is helpful to our economy
Yeah.
to have people come down and stay.
I would think it's hard to top that event. Huh? Is that considered one of the big ones, or
Oyster
especially
Fest, I
for the
think,
75th?
Oyster Fest is probably another
Oyster
big
Fest
one.
is
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
But it's just nice, and it seemed to be weather worked out great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to ask you a couple other questions here this morning. We heard a story over the weekend. A counterpart of yours in Spokane County was talking about the governor, and he signed that sanctuary law. He says
Right.
he won't enforce that.
Sheriff
Can you
Knezevich.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that and kind of Mason County's deal with how these sanctuary counties or laws or the states, how you guys interact with that kind of stuff?
Really, I guess the challenge to this, Jeff, is it's like everything else, and you comment on these things, I'm sure your ratings go up because it gets both sides just go nuts no matter what you say. So you can't be right either way. But for us, we've always said in our area and for the law enforcement in the state, when the governor signed this proclamation to not contact these people, law enforcement doesn't do that anyway. So I don't know why that was such a big deal. Law
Okay.
enforcement, when we stop you, we don't ask you if you're a Democrat or Republican, or we don't ask you what country you're from or anything like that. We stop you because of a lawful violation. It isn't our place to go in and start asking these intrusive questions, and unless we have some other very meaningful reason that leads to some type of criminal activity or something to do that. We contact people. Driver's license, registration, proof of insurance is what we ask for. And we move on from that. So I know that Sheriff Knezevich, a good friend of mine, great friend of mine actually, I've known him for many years, has taken a stand on some of this. And it just seems like lately some of the things that are going on in our government, we're told one thing and then people do another. And we're guided, law enforcement is guided by the Constitution. And we take that very seriously because you're taught from the time you go through the academy about people's constitutional rights and your search and seizure laws and those things. And we're expected to follow this very closely. And then when other people do other things outside of that, it seemed to be making other things okay. And I think that Sheriff Knezevich has taken a stand. He's concerned about some of the things going on.
Does the state constitution supersede the federal constitution, or is it the same, or how does that work?
Everything kind of comes back to, and I'm not, you probably have an attorney for this. It'd be better to have one of those guys on here. But the way I look at it is when you, everything's based on our Constitution of the United States. And so anything that's going to go back through the courts, as it moves from our courts here, if it goes back to the Supreme Court, is pretty much the Supreme Court judges everything and weighs that against, is it constitutional, does it fall within the Constitution of the United States? So generally it's going to go back and fall in there. That's why it keeps progressing up the way through the
Okay, I see what
local
you're
courts
saying.
and all the way to the Supreme Court makes those ultimate decisions on how things are going to carry out. I think the challenging thing is right now with going into all the rest of this stuff is these initiatives and things that are going through are, to me, are just they're maybe not the best way to make law, because what's happened to almost every initiative that's gone through, it starts off one way, and by the time it gets through the legislature, neither side that were opposing each other might even get close to what they want.
Sure.
By the time it gets done, then they have to go back again and start over. And
What's kind of like 970, the law that was initially gone through initiative process, and then one side wasn't too keen on how it worked, the other side as well, but everybody came together on that one for sure.
yeah, 16 or 940, you mean?
Yeah,
I-940, you said 970.
940.
940. Yeah, and then 1639 the same way. You know, I mean, that's been a very difficult process, and we still are reeling. We're still having meetings across the state of Washington. As you know, I wasn't happy with that because
Yeah.
I could see a long time ago this was going to be a problem, and we were told that it won't be a problem, and it's been a horrific issue to decide on issues and how that's all going to pan out. We're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And the more we try to figure it out, and we've met again and again and again, the more complicated it gets to meet all the legal requirements. And that's what we're all looking at. As every time that a decision is made, it throws a bunch of legal requirements in or out the window, which changes the process all the way along. And then you have to weigh, then we have to go back and weigh the constitutionality of the laws that have been made, and it puts us in a bind in law enforcement.
Because when initiatives are made, they're made by the people, and those don't necessarily have either constitutional
Sure.
backgrounds or law
Right.
backgrounds. They just have an idea that they think something is a good idea, and whether or not it holds muster later,
And then
by
it
that
gets
time
challenged.
it gets challenged and voted on.
And the hard part is for law enforcement, whichever way those things go, is that we always seem to be in the middle of it, and nobody wants to make a decision. That comes down to, well, let the sheriffs make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're stuck with something you said in the beginning. Doesn't look good, guys. This doesn't look good. You know, we keep saying the bridge is out, and they keep running the train down the track, and then it gets to the bridge, and then they call us up and say fix it. And it's sometimes it's late in the process when they ask us to make decisions based on legal issues. It's really tough.
You guys go and talk to the legislators every year.
We do.
And do you, is it only a one-time thing, or are you in constant contact with even just our 35th reps on how things are moving through?
No, actually, I'm really fortunate. Our reps here, I saw Representative Griffey on walking through the parade, and we were talking
Yeah.
about issues, and Representative McEwen and Tim Sheldon. Interestingly enough, we talk all the time about things. I mean, we just run into each other, and we're close by, and
Yeah.
and we're good friends and able to talk about those things really easily. But we do have representatives from the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, or the Sheriffs Association of Police Chiefs. We're the only. This is really unique in the entire country. We're the only place in the entire country that the sheriffs and the police chiefs come together under the title of WASPIC, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, and we all sit down together and look at these things and make decisions. And there's representatives from each of the agencies in the state of Washington, including like DNR, Washington State Parks. Everybody's in on those, and we sit down. And we have some representatives that meet through WASPIC. They're always on the Hill up there. But like you say, on these initiatives, once those things get started, it's tough to get either side
Sure.
to back up a little bit and slow down, and it just gets very complicated. It just comes out for us. It's very, very tough when you're the person in the field having to make a call on something that nobody else is willing to make a call on. So either way you do it, you're going to get criticized.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge for the law enforcement people. It keeps putting us in the middle of all these different issues. As I said many months ago, it was like and I get criticized for it, but I still say I'm right. It's like when we came out with the laws on the marijuana issue, the difference between the federal government standing and the difference on the state standing, and what do they look to? Law enforcement to make the right decision. Well, how do you do that when both sides of that issue are very, very different,
Yeah.
asking us to make that call? So it's been really challenging. I guess it's just the way of the world when you're in law enforcement, though.
And that trickles down. I mean, that's not only just the sheriff, but those are the officers on the streets
For
in the
everyone.
middle of the night.
Yes.
2:00 in the morning, they have to make these calls.
And it's really hard, and not to be critical either, because it's not easy for them, but we have cases that go into trial and court orders are issued, and they'll have specific directions in court orders that tell you Jeff can't come within 1,000 feet of Spencer. except for they kind of forgot that you both live in the same housing development and you're within 500 feet of each other already.
Right.
So who do we enforce that against? That kind of stuff happens all the time. You're standing there at 3 a.m. on a disturbance and you're reading paperwork that gives you direction that doesn't work for either one, and then you're expected to make the call and be right every time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real challenging. I mean, it's just the way of the world in our business. And usually you can figure it out, but if it goes sideways, it always comes back on you. So it's challenging with all these initiatives and things going through. But it's just the way it goes. It's been going that way for a long time. But recently, there's been I think, more initiatives than we've ever seen that affect us.
Yeah. Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury, thanks for talking with us a little
Thank
bit
you.
this morning. Always good to see you and answering our
Good to see you.
questions here as we take a break, getting ready to get to the top of the hour here at 8 o'clock.